This is the iPhone 16e in a very snazzy pink silicone case. I've also got a blue case here if you fancy going for that, which you might want to because the 16e only comes in white or black. And also because this doesn't support MagSafe, you might want to get a third-party case so you can then put your MagSafe peripherals and chargers on top. This does still have wireless charging, but at the slower 7.5 watts, which is half the speed of MagSafe, which you'll get in the regular iPhones. So this is it, the 16e. It's their cheapest iPhone, starts at $599 here in the UK and the US. You get 128 gigs of storage for that, and it's $200 less than the iPhone 16. But it's also about 170-ish more than the outgoing iPhone SE 3rd generation. It's also a lot bigger. It's essentially the exact same size as a regular iPhone 15 or 16, but unlike those guys, we're going back to the notch, which we haven't had since the iPhone 14. I must admit, I'm a bit sad that we no longer have a small iPhone. The 4.7 on the SE was really cute, and if they just, trim those bezels back and given us Face ID like we have here, basically given us this design but in a smaller form factor, I think that would have been really cool and unique. But alas, no. And so as the name suggests, this is basically an iPhone 16, well, entry level. So it's kind of like a weird mix of old and new. We have the brand new A18 chip, although a slightly lower clocked version in terms of the graphics. We have 8 GB of RAM, which means it fully supports Apple Intelligence. We have USB-C, we've got the action button here. No camera control, which you get on the 16 series, but I think for most of us, the action button's a bit more important. I actually have it as a shortcut to ChatGPT, but you can customize it to pretty much anything you like, including Apple's AI visual intelligence, where you can scan your surroundings. It's basically Google Lens. If you are coming from an older iPhone with an IPS, then the jump to OLED with its infinite contrast and deep inky blacks and vibrant rich colors, it will be very nice. And with a main 48 megapixel camera, which is near enough the same as the iPhone 16, it does miss out on a couple of features, but it does all the basics, the essentials, really well. And also, while you probably don't care about this at all, this actually is the first time Apple has used their own modem. Rather than a Qualcomm chip, we've now got the Apple C1 in here, which is, I'm told, the most efficient modem. So if Wi-Fi, 5G, 4G connectivity, the most efficient modem they've ever used in an iPhone. Also the fact that it has a longer battery life than the more expensive iPhone 16 by a good few hours. The streamed video playback is 21 versus 18. And it's also a tough cookie. We have IP68 water and dust resistance, we have their ceramic shield, although it's the slightly older version of it, not the one you got on the 16, but it's still pretty tough. And I know we miss out on some of the fun colors of the iPhone 16. As I say, this just comes in white or black. But I think it's actually a really smart design. I love that we have the matte finish. We've got the nice aluminum frame around the edge. Also, I'm not saying this is the reason to buy a 16e over a 16, but on a flat surface, on a desk, it doesn't move at all, whereas the 16 wobbles a little bit there. And even though it's only 600 quid, I'd still recommend putting a case on it, and these guys can make it a lot more fun. And if you're buying this for your kids as their first or second iPhone, first of all, lucky kids, but also a fun case like this, and with iOS 18 you can customize the home screen and match the colors and have some fun with it. It also includes all their safety features like emergency SOS, roadside assistance, crash detection. This comes running iOS 18.3.1, which means we have pretty much all the Apple Intelligence stuff already baked in and already working. It's been a bit of an awkward trickle of features with updates and bugs and issues. Now you can go into an Apple store, you can buy an iPhone 16e for $599, and except for some stuff, some screen contextual stuff that links to Siri that's still coming at a later date, you're getting all the fun AI stuff, from summarizing notes and making Genmojis, and you've got the cleanup tool for photos. Arguably, a lot of this AI stuff is a bit gimmicky, and not everyone's going to use all of it all the time. But the fact that only the iPhone 15 Pros, as well as the iPhone 16 series, and now this, actually support Apple Intelligence because it requires 8 GB of RAM and a more recent processor, having that A18 chip and support for Apple Intelligence, I think makes this a lot more future-proof. So I'm playing this game called Infinity Nikki, which is very graphically demanding. I've actually put all the settings up to max. They're all sort of ultra presets, and it obviously runs, I'd say it's not the smoothest, and maybe getting mid-20s in the frame rates. Games like this is where you'll see a benefit from going with the iPhone 16, or more likely the Pro series as well with the A18 Pro. But if I just drop the settings a little bit, let's go to the balanced preset there, and it runs really well. So again, for $599, you're not really going to get better performance out of a phone. To give you an idea, this is the 16E, this is the regular 16, if I can flip it over, and I've run a couple of quick benchmarks, and in Geekbench 6, which tests the processor, there's really nothing in it. They're basically the same, A18, A18. However, if we jump over to 3D Mark, which tests the GPU performance, the graphics, you can see we've gone from 3000 up to 4100. So that is quite a bump in GPU performance. So for more demanding gaming, yes, this is a good deal faster, but will you notice that in real life? Not so much, I don't think. So who's buying this? Well, Apple reckon it's for those upgrading from an iPhone 11 or older, or perhaps if you have the previous generation SE, in which case, yes, this will be a significant upgrade. And it's not really meant for people like me, tech reviewers, tech enthusiasts. This is for people who walk into an Apple store and just want an iPhone. They don't want to spend an absolute fortune. They don't care about the difference between 60 and 120 hertz. They want this for their kids, or they want it because their old one's broken and they don't want to spend a fortune. Now let's say you are coming from the previous iPhone SE, which came out 3 years ago, the beginning of 2022. This is a massive upgrade. Obviously 4.7 to 6.1 inches. We've gone from IPS to OLED, and also they bumped the brightness up to 1200 nits. We've gone from Touch ID with those chunky bezels to Face ID with a notch. We've got a 48 megapixel camera up here, 12 megapixel true depth selfie up from 7 megapixels. Lightning is out, USB-C is in. The A15 chip has been bumped up to the A18, which is the same as you get in the iPhone 16, except it has one fewer graphics core, but it's not the end of the world, really. Also double the base storage, 128 gigabytes, and of course it supports Apple Intelligence. We have the action button, we have improved processing with the camera, it's Apple's Smart HDR5 up from 4, and we're talking double the battery life. Even just going by Apple's numbers, it goes from 10 hours of streamed video playback to 21 hours. That's a huge improvement for battery, and chances are if you've been using an SE for the last 3 years, it's degraded quite significantly since then as well. Yes, it's more expensive, yes, it's bigger, but it is a heck of an upgrade. Is it worth spending an extra £200 to go for the iPhone 16 over the 16E? Probably not, honestly, for the people who'd be considering buying this. I'll put the full little table here, chart, list, whatever you want to call it, spec guide of the differences between them. But unless one of those things, you know, is like a must-have, deal-breaker, red line for you, you're better off saving £200. I genuinely think the only things that you'll miss going for this rather than the 16 is possibly MagSafe if you have other people in the house who do use MagSafe accessories. Also, it would be nice to have a dedicated telephoto. Yes, you can have a 2x lossless optical zoom, they call it, because it uses a crop, a 12 megapixel crop of the 48 megapixel sensor. But I think a lot of people do quite like having a second zoom camera, particularly for portraits. I've also noticed, because we don't have a telephoto lens, when I switch to portrait mode, I actually have to get really close to the subject. Even if I punch into the 2x to get a nicer field of view for the portrait, because it doesn't have that telephoto lens, I have to get really close up for it to detect a subject. And we are missing out on a few nice extras with the camera. There's no cinematic mode, there's no action mode, you can't shoot in RAW, and also we get the older version of photography styles. So while you can put their nice semantic, fancy, smart filter on it, you can't take it off afterwards, and you don't have that nice little sort of color grading bar thing that you do on the newer 16 phones. The cameras, and by cameras I mean the one on the back and the one on the front, are a bit of a downgrade versus the 16. You lose the full focus pixels, and also the stabilization isn't quite as good. I'll do more testing of that in my full review, but the quality is still very nice, and Audio Mix does certainly allow you to shoot little videos like this in Paddington Station, which is very loud, and it not sound terrible. There's also no always on display, so when you turn the screen off, it just goes, well, black. And also we've gone back to the notch rather than the more useful dynamic island. Does it bother me as a tech enthusiast that you're getting a 60 Hz screen for £600 in 2025? Yes, it does. Does it feel like they've just rehashed spare parts from older iPhones into this and dropped in the current chip? Also, yes. And does it feel like if they price this at $499, 100 quid less, it would be a whole lot more compelling and we could forgive more of its shortcomings? Absolutely yes. But again, if you are one of the people buying this, it's because you just want an iPhone and you don't really care how the, I don't know, Galaxy A56 or Pixel 9a or whatever. You want an iPhone because you have a MacBook Air and maybe you have AirPods and you used to have an iPhone and you can trade it in and get this for less money. You're in the ecosystem and you just want a nice, easy life and a good iPhone. And for that, this ticks all the boxes. You can buy it right now, as I say, starting for $599. You can also pay a little bit more if you want 256 gigs of storage, but I probably wouldn't bother doing that. What do you think? Are you going to pick pick one up? Do you think it's a waste of money? Would you pay $200 more for the 16? And also drop a comment if there's anything you'd like me to test for my full review. I'm gonna carry this around for the next few weeks, so if there's anything you'd like me to test or try out, let me know in the comments. I'll see you next time right here on the Tech Chat.